Hi everyone, and welcome to our Headless talk. Today we're going to talk about right this subject. Let's first introduce ourselves. I hope that it's going to work. You're trying to control this from the mobile. It works. So my name is Evgeniy. I'm working as a CTO at SystemSeed, and this is Kate. She works as a very good technical lead at SystemSeed. And now Kate is going to introduce the thing which we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Ev. Thanks, everyone, for coming. So in this talk, we are going to share our experience in building Falcon. Not this Falcon, no rocket science in this talk. This one. So Falcon is an open source web platform for charities. At SystemSeed, we've been building platforms for charities, and we've been working with charities for a while. And we noticed that charities often prefer custom solutions over existing ones, because existing ones are often either too complicated and expensive, enterprise level, or in the opposite way, they're quite basic and hard to extend. So we decided to build Falcon. We started from a logo and a slogan. Then we created a public repo on GitHub and installed Drupal 8. That worked pretty well, so we decided to move on. And not that far. Here, we decided to move on and make Falcon API-first platform, because we wanted all these modern front-end tools, frameworks, and third parties to be easily integrated with Falcon. On top of that, we wanted Falcon to support multiple sites, and also known as multiple consumers, so that an organization can run all its sites or multiple sites on one backend. That would allow saved costs, and as well as that, simplify editorial experience. Finally, we wanted, and we still want, to make Falcon as simple as possible for developers. And in this talk today, Ev and I will share some problems that we faced while building Falcon and how we solved or didn't solve them. So Ev, could you please tell us about our first problem?
Sure, problem time. Problem number one, it doesn't really belong to Headless yet, but it was the main focus of our development team, like how to give a good tool to people who build content, who actually edit it. How many of you guys know the module called paragraphs? All of you. So it wasn't invented by us, and thanks for all people who are contributing to the ecosystem of this project, because thanks to that we got a very good user experience for content editorial experience. Let me show you the reason why we actually have this big paragraphs as a starting point for this platform, for our platform, and what we wanted to achieve. Because based on this decision, all our feature work and API-based stuff was based. So I'll try to demo you right now sort of experience which I think all content editors deserve these days. If you look at trying to create a new page, to add a new paragraph, let's add some large image with heading, with some preview video and stuff. Done, paragraph 1 added. Content editors can really build the pages themselves, very, very flexibly. Point your attention that there are many different paragraph types. That's one of the issues we have met during the development. I'll talk about this in a few seconds. So, editor just added an image grid, now something more complex. Dynamic block with the latest news, for example. Save the content, and now look at this. Editors have just built, oops, okay, I hit pause. No. Let me rewind a little bit. So adding the latest blog, saving the content. And that sort of experience we want to provide to content editors. That's a very beautiful way of building very flexible pages. And this is, okay, it's looping. That was the basis, like I said, for our platform. Give people tool. Now we had to think how to make this tool expose it to the front-end applications to give good user experience for people viewing the front-end. What all cool kids use these days for decoupled? JSON API, GraphQL, which is a good way to build your API for systems by default, because it gives you tools straight away. The problem which we faced actually, like I said, and in our case, we had a client with like 60-something paragraph types, and having to ask front-end developers to build a query to fetch 60 different paragraph types with the different fields. And remember, paragraph types are references. And these paragraph types, they also have fields that might reference, for instance, taxonomy terms, other nodes. So the structure is like node, then paragraphs, then these paragraphs have also different fields. And the problem is that if you would go with these solutions, which are solutions which, like I said, all cool kids use these days, we would face insane problems with the development and support, because the kind of queries from the front end would be like this. It would be absolutely not possible to support them in the longer run. So, what was the solution? REST from core? It's kind of simple, right? Because all you need to do is just to make a query to fetch a node. The problem is, with the REST though, it doesn't support nested structure. If you will query a node, a page, it will give you just a node with the references. It will give you, instead of an entity, it will give you an ID of this entity. If instead of the paragraph, it will give you the ID of this paragraph. It will not give you the content of this paragraph. And that was the problem. So, what we did, if you have a beautiful tool which is lacking a feature, why don't we build this feature? That's exactly what we've done. So, we've developed a module called REST Entity Recursive, which actually fulfills the need. It makes the REST support nested structure. If you will request a node, it will give you the node, it will give you all the paragraphs of this node, it will give you all nested references, all nested like taxonomy terms and nodes from those paragraphs as well in one query. And our front-end developers don't have to suffer from having to build very complex queries. Just an example, that's the old way to build pages, to request for data from nodes. That's the new one. Same, like I said, we just buffed the JSON, the REST API a little bit, and that worked flawlessly well. Kate is going to talk about the next problem. I hope.
Yeah, so I accidentally closed the slider thing. Oh, I now have it. Thanks. It was a joke, actually.
I know.
So, Drupal routing. You guys, I believe, know all these awesome modules and features, and this is very flexible, and what's especially important, it is very flexible for editors. Editors and content managers can control pretty much everything related to URLs on your website, which is very nice, and we wanted all these features to be available on decoupled websites as well. So we spent some time experimenting with some solutions like fieldable path. I'm not sure if anyone have heard about this module. Decoupled router module in combination with sub-requests and JSON API. That worked, but to be honest, it was a bit too complex. So in Falcon, we decided to undo all of this and go with pure Drupal Core solution. So what does it mean? When you when you request a node or any page in Drupal, Drupal redirects you automatically to a correct, most recent path for that resource. This is how it works for HTML format, obviously, and this is how it actually works for any REST format. So look at that second path. It doesn't really look like a common endpoint, API endpoint. It doesn't have any API prefix or something, but actually it is. So this is a valid API request using REST entity recursive. So instead of telling our dev team that we have endpoints A, B, and C for fetching content, some metadata, some routing information, aliases, so on, redirects, we say that everything is now endpoint, and all you need to do is just add this format parameter. Done. You will get everything that you want to render on that page. This approach has a couple of challenges when it comes to multi-site installations, but we will talk about it a bit later. For now, I would like to talk about another problem that we solved with REST entity recursive module. So think about site configuration. I believe pretty much every site has some kind of logo, menu, header, footer, and in case of multiple sites supported on one backend, different sites will need different configuration, and editors will want to control that. So if editors want to manage that, in this case, probably it's not a configuration anymore. It's kind of content, site-wide, per site content. And if it is content, it means that we can reuse our existing API solution for content, which is REST entity recursive. So to solve that problem, we first install REST entity recursive, but REST entity recursive needs entity. So we need to create something. For that purpose, we install config pages, very nice module that allows you to create a config and assign edit page anywhere in your menu. Then you, as a developer, can create as many fields using Drupal Core as you need. For example, if you need a logo, you just create media entity reference field. If you need a menu, you create menu entity reference field, and REST entity recursive will figure out how to expose that menu. And if your menu links have fields, it will also figure out how to expose them. Oops.
It was me, sorry.
Thanks. So, and finally, if you have some, let's say, custom, private, permission-based fields which you don't want to expose, then you can just install field permissions and configure it on per field level. So once you are done with all this clicking exercise, because those modules are available, you don't need to code anything, you just go to that endpoint, your config page, format, JSON recursive, done. Everything is returned back to you. I actually explained it longer than it took to implement this. That was very nice developer experience. So let's check out something more challenging, right? E-commerce. Thanks, Boyan, for great presentation. We love Drupal commerce, and we didn't spend any time deciding what we will be using for commerce. Of course, it will be Drupal commerce. It's very flexible, powerful. You can start from very basic things, and you can grow to enterprise level, very complex systems. We love it. Again, with
Not a Drupal commerce anymore.
we don't love company that we are fine with that. It can have any name, to be honest. It's not that important. Yeah. We love open source community around that and the project. Thank you very much. So speaking of Drupal commerce, again, if you want to fetch a product or price or something, you can use REST entity recursive, and it will return all variations, prices, images, categories, all the stuff that you need to render. But what about checkout flows? So take a look at this form. It's checkout format, and it doesn't look like a common Drupal form. It has many small details here and there that make this form very performant and user-friendly for that specific use case, for that specific charity. And we want to build many forms like that, very flexible with different steps, fields, look and feel, obviously. But we want all of those forms to be integrated with Drupal Commerce. But we didn't have a solution for that. So we built Commerce Decoupled Checkout. And you can go and download it on Drupal.org. What it is that simple, one API endpoint module. You throw everything that you know about your order in this API endpoint, and it will do the rest. It will create order, users, fields, order items. Even if you provide some payment details, then it will try to make a transaction for you, and it will return status of your order, either success or failure, with error message. If for some reason you don't want to complete payment immediately, then you can use second API endpoint. We also have it for capturing transactions later. So this is that simple, very basic, but working solution. Commerce Decoupled Checkout. Go try it if you have a similar use case right now and you don't have time to wait for more generic solution in Drupal Commerce. As I said, it doesn't have full support of Drupal Commerce framework, obviously, but you're very welcome to contribute. It solved our problem, but actually it wasn't the last problem we had. Was it, Ev?
No, it wasn't. I wish. Who wants more problems? Next one, SEO and Metatags. This one is a relatively simple one, comparing to others. Basically, the first one, the meta tag module, who works flawlessly and we all use it, still needs patch. But basically, well, if you haven't patched anything, you haven't experienced Drupal, right? So that's not a problem. It's kind of the first step to get it working. The problem comes when you want to serve meta tags for multiple websites because of this little thing, because of the site name. What site name to use? Drupal by default has the config with only one site name. What's your site name? But if you're serving multiple websites, what site name to use? If you want to put this into the title of your page. But basically, people do that. Two solutions. Solution number one. If you're working with a decoupled, you're likely using consumers already for serving image styles at least, maybe for handling authentication and so forth. So for these people, we've built a little module called consumers token. What it does, it simply replaces, it adds a new token, you can guess, which replaces the name of the current consumer who requests the meta tags with the name of the site, of the consumer who requests that. So basically, instead of using the site column name token, you use consumers name token. And if site A requests meta tags, it replaces it with the site name of the site A. If site B does the same, it replaces it with site B. That problem was solved. The second way to do this, if you're for some reason not using consumers, you can solve it with config pages, what Kate just said. It can be a simple text field, which it will just customly throw into the head of your front-end application. That works fine as well. More problems. But now we're actually getting to not solved problems, because things are getting more and more complicated. Let's talk about advanced content serving. Imagine this scenario. Let's think the website Drupal has node type news. And you want to serve one node to site A and site B, but second node to site C. So when when the front end requests data, we need to do some sort of permissioning to say, and actually, hold on, let me make a step back. We actually need to give content editors opportunity to mark nodes, like Wasn't me. To mark nodes with the site A and site B, so that when they create this page, they can say these news should go to site A and site B, but not to site C. And the same with this one. When they create a new node, they want to say that I want this news to be published only on site C. Like I said, we haven't solved this problem, but we were thinking about this for quite a while, and we want to share the solution. If somebody has a similar problem, we're very welcome to join us and contribute to this solution together. So the idea behind the solution which we're thinking of, that's the way to go, we haven't done anything yet, is to build a field based again on the consumer, which will give editors the missing bit to tag, like, I want this content to go to consumer A, I want this content to go to consumer B, and then add sort of middle layer between the consumers, because the consumers, when they make a request to the backend, they do need to add a signature, I am a consumer A. And we want to add this middle layer to actually say, like a permission kind of thing. Consumer A can't access nodes who were marked with other consumers. That's simple, at least by the sound of it. It might get way more complex than we think. Next hard problem, which is advanced routing. Again, think about this scenario. Like Kate said, what we are doing with our current front-end applications, they just throw whatever the URL they get, they throw it into the backend and ask, hey, backend, do you have something, the content on this page, on this URL? And it follows the redirects, like it said. It works flawlessly well. But what if you want to have this scenario? Site A might want to have the about page, which is one piece of content, one node. And site B at the same time want the same URL, because /about page is kind of normal to have on every website, or /contact, for instance, but it needs to serve different content. So what we want to do in this case, what we plan to do, is actually to base the solution on the solution which doesn't exist yet, which is consumer field. So we're building a second solution. We are thinking of a second solution on top of the solution which still doesn't exist as well. That's smart. That's how you sell things, right? And basically, the direction which we want to take here is we want to let, when content editors mark nodes with certain consumers, like consumer A and consumer B, we want to do something like similar to what regional differences for the URL, how different, how that works already in Drupal with the different regions. Because obviously, right now in Drupal, you can go and have 2 pages /about for different languages, and that's going to work flawlessly well. We want to extend this idea, integrate it with the idea of field consumer, so when a node is tagged with consumer A, the path is saved, the URL is also tagged with consumer A. So when consumer A requests something, what's on this URL? It will return the node. When consumer B will do the same, it will say, well, I don't have this node, there's nothing on this URL. That's how we plan to solve this problem. So far, that's the score. We're still winning. That's good. But still, 2 hard issues are still there, and it will take a while to solve them. That was short. Thank you, guys. Any questions?
What about performance of your recursive API? You mentioned that anybody could use field permissions model. So when I have some complex entity with many references, for example, 5 entities with many fields, and it may be big performance cost to check all these permissions.
Do you want to take it or shall I?
Go for it. I will add my comment.
All right. So basically, that's a very good question because, like, there's a trade-off. JSON API and GraphQL, they're more performant by default because they request only the pieces of data that you need, right? In case of REST, and especially in case of REST recursive, when you need to fetch a lot of data in one query, it makes things less performant. But it depends on the context. Like, if you're trying to implement the project for anonymous users first, Drupal is very good at caching. You can provide the caching context so that these requests, they work flawlessly fast. And we have a project which works like that because we are serving anonymous users. If we don't do that, it might become slower. It will be slower, obviously. You have to just make this trade-off. Maybe we will need eventually to add an additional caching layer to cache the performance of that. Drupal is good at caching, but generally. They cache entities anyway and stuff like that. So far, we haven't experienced this problem just because we are working on a project which is designed to be served for anonymous users. And Drupal solved this by default, by page cache stuff, right?
If I can comment on that, it's not just for anonymous users. REST API and caching mechanism built in core REST API allows you to attach context that will cache entity for everyone if that entity is not changed. And this is how it built in REST entity recursive. For example, obviously your caching tags, your caching context become quite big because instead of returning one node with few fields, you're returning node and all few referenced node and let's say 100 of paragraphs. And all this information comes to this caching context. Drupal remembers that, and anytime you request that same URL, Drupal will return cached variant unless you change something. Like, let's say you go and change a reference node. You change title. It means that your parent request is now invalid. You need to recache it. So it works quite nice with built-in caching mechanism, and that's why we didn't face any issues so far. But I agree that at some point we may face them. So it's not just for anonymous users.
But if there are many roles, and we have cache context based on user role, it will be difficult
Things
to
get
cache
more
this.
complicated, and yes.
It will
yes.
work per role as well. Your caching tables will be bigger, but...
Okay, thanks.
Like I said, it's a performance trade-off you need to be aware of. Because from support point of view, it's faster. It's easier to build, but it's a good question.
First of all, I cannot stop thinking how awesome you are. Thank you for the speech.
It's her.
Great.
It was her job.
It wasn't a paid comment.
I hope so. And the question, did you have a case about changing render layer, about each site has own design, own theme? As I understand, it's SPA. You had Vue.js or React application for renderers. Did you have a case about changing the theme layer for each site?
It's completely independent. Like site A has its own theme, and it isn't controlled by Falcon at all. So we basically, if you want to build site A and site B, you have two front ends. In case if they are very similar, then you can have the same site and just change colors, let's say. But again, it's responsibility for of your front end application.
Yeah, so that's not different themes, it's like different applications.
Yeah.
That's why we're more focused on Drupal backend, because like you're gonna accommodate all the content, all commerce stuff in one place. It's much easier to support. There are many benefits of that. We just didn't have time to include everything into the talk. But the front-end applications completely separate, if you want them to be separate.
Yeah, okay.
Different React applications.
Okay,
React.js
thank you.
in our case.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, and a question particularly related to the commerce model you shown that allows us to do decal form in decoupled way. And the question if it's possible to embed this form for authenticated users, and if it's possible, is security perspective, particularly protection from cross-site request forgery, provided something out of the box, or something should be installed in addition?
So the question is to talk about, that's a general problem in, well, a thing in the decoupled. You need to think how you submit the data from forms, right?
Exactly.
Oh, that's the demo. This is a very good question. To be honest, I don't recall. We solved this problem, but I don't recall what was the solution for that.
For authenticated requests, we just used what Drupal supports. So you can either use cookie authentication or simple OAuth, preferred solution for authenticated requests. In case of anonymous form submissions, it depends. You need a token. Obviously, you need a token. In case of this particular form, the payment gateways take care of that.
Yeah, so because if we are considering cookie authentication, that yes, we protect from cross-site request forgery, but yeah, but anyway, it's not a protection because this form can be embedded to another website and the form can be submitted on behalf of.
No, it can't. In Drupal, you just configure cores in a way which you want it to work, and in our case, we don't allow requests from random sites. We just say we allow requests from site A, B, and C. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. If you are doing
again core.
But if you are going to just request, but if you are doing just a simple post, then I believe that it will be possible. But okay, thanks.
We can talk about it a bit later.
Yeah, I think the short answer is use cores, and for authenticated user like authentication, it will not allow to make this kind of request.
So, given there are unresolved issues, what is the status of the whole project?
Say it again?
Given there are unresolved issues, what is the total status of the project? Of
Up and running.
So it's not stable yet.
Why?
Falcon.
It is stable, it's up and running, serves sites.
The site, yeah, it's right now in beta, but basically, we have some unsolved problems, but the MVP version of the product is already up and running. You can create content, you can serve multiple frontends. Yeah, if you want to have /about page on different websites, for example, it is an issue right now, but you don't really have to have this. I mean, to launch the project, you don't really have to have this problem solved. It's just the plan, the way to go.
Actually, any healthy project will have unsolved problems. That's nature of development.
We're just thinking more about the future. Our clients haven't requested this yet, but we know what they will want next.
One more question. Thanks again, and hello. I think I missed a part, like why you decided to go forward with pure REST. Why you didn't improve the JSON API, because it's already in core and it's like a really modern way to implement your headless. So why REST?
That's a very good question. I don't know if it was explained by us thoroughly enough. The thing is, if you have seen the amount of paragraph types, it's here for the client. And that's actually why the first problem was explained talking about paragraphs. Think if you have 60-something, 70 paragraph types, right? Every paragraph type has a bunch of fields inside of it. And now try to imagine the kind of requests from the front end which you would have to compile to request for this data. And how do you try to include all these fields and nesting into the query?
And the other problem is that we want to make it flexible. We can't hard code it because we don't know which fields will be used. In one project, one fields and paragraphs, also pages are dynamic. Editors can add one paragraph or 100 paragraphs. Or also developers can introduce a new reference field for some reason on node level, because they are developers, they can do whatever they want. And we want that data to be exposed too, so we need to go and update all JSON API queries or something. And we worked this way, to be honest, we worked with this way, and it was, at some point, it was very hard to maintain.
Basically, we're not saying that you shouldn't use JSON API. It's very good. And it's stable, it's in core, and applause to the maintainers of that. It wasn't our case because we had an experience with JSON API. We knew what sort of problems we will run into maintaining that kind of that sort of amount of paragraph types with the nested referencing. That will go just crazy.
Just like a summary, if I use paragraphs, would you suggest me to use the recursive?
No. It depends on the amount. If you're having like a few paragraphs with sort of base with several fields, that's fine. You can do this in the front end. The query will look small. Go for it. I mean, you don't have to go with this solution if you are happy with the JSON API stuff or GraphQL stuff. That was because we know how much data we do have on the backend. We know how much data we would have to, how much work we would have to do on the front end, and then support this. And obviously not all front-end developers, they want to go and understand all this deep nesting of Drupal data. If you want to include the media, you need to include this field and grab it from the super deep nesting stuff back. It would just go, it would be just a mess.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
You're very welcome.
If I can comment quickly on that, they are not exclusive, the solutions. We successfully combined JSON API, Views REST, and REST entity recursive in cases where we need. They all can coexist, because obviously JSON API has some powerful features, awesome features which we can use and should use.
Okay, thank you. I think we run out of time.
Thank you, guys.